Hello everyone, this is LATHA AKULA. In this video, we are going to study about a role of macro and micronutrients. So already we have studied about different macro and micronutrients, right? Now we'll see individually about the each element and their role in the growth of the plant. And that the first one is the nitrogen. So the nitrogen, it is required for the plant in the greatest amount. If you see, this nitrogen is a macro element, right? So in the macro elements, this nitrogen is required for the plant in the greatest amounts. And this nitrogen is absorbed in the form of nitrous ions, nitrate ions, ammonium ions, etc. Nitrous, nitrate and ammonium ions. And the nitrogen is required by all parts of the plant, particularly meristematic tissue. The meristematic tissue, what will happen? The cell division occurs, right? Rapid cell division occurs in the meristematic tissue. And also it is also required for the metabolically active cells. This nitrogen is required for the meristematic tissues and metabolically active cells. And it is a major constituent of proteins, nucleic acids, vitamins and hormone. The nitrogen is the important constituent of the proteins, nucleic acids, vitamins and hormones. And this nitrogen essential for the almost all the different types of metabolic activities of the plants, like photosynthesis, cell growth, cell division, respiration and reproduction process. For all this, the nitrogen is the important constituent. The next one is phosphorus. The next element is phosphorus. This phosphorus is absorbed in the form of phosphate ions like H2PO4 minus and HPO4 2 minus. And this phosphorus after absorption is stored in fruits, seeds and some storage organs and young meristematic tissues. This phosphorus was stored. And it is the constituent of cell membrane, certain proteins, nucleic acids, ATP. ATP means adenosine triphosphate, right? NADP. Here also the phosphate is present, and several nucleoproteins. It is the important constituent. And it is required for the phosphorylation reactions also. What is meant by phosphorylation reaction? For the addition of the phosphate is called as phosphorylation reactions. For those phosphorylation reactions, phosphorus is the required. And deficiency of this phosphorus causes red or purple color spots on the leaves, and at the same time it delays the seed germination also. The deficiency of the phosphorus causes germination delay. And next one is potassium. This potassium is absorbed in the form of potassium ions. It is absorbed in the form of potassium ions and required in meristematic tissues, buds, leaves, root tips. And it is also involved in the protein synthesis. Potassium is involved in which process? Protein synthesis. And here by means of this protein synthesis only different proteins are formed, and it helps in the maintaining ionic balance in the cells. Potassium involved in the maintaining the ionic balance, and not only that, it helps in maintaining the turgidity of the cell, and also for the closing and opening of the stomata. These potassium ions, they play important role, right? Already we have studied about this. And it activates several enzymes like several enzymes which are involved in several reactions like photosynthesis, respiration, chlorophyll synthesis and phosphorylation reactions. So the enzymes involved in all these reactions were activated by this potassium. And the deficiency of the potassium causes scorched leaf tips. Here the scorched leaf tips means like burnt or dried form. The leaves will appear like burnt appearance or dried appearance. The tips of the leaves appear in the form of burnt form. And the loss of cambial activity and plastic disintegration are the symptoms of the deficiency of the potassium. And the fourth element is calcium. This calcium is absorbed in the form of calcium ions. It is absorbed in the form of calcium ions, and it is also necessary for the meristematic tissue and differentiating tissues. And it is accumulated, if you see in the mobilization process and during the senescing process, or from the older leaves are falling or dead leaves, whatever the mineral elements present will be mobilized to the growing tips. But this calcium is accumulated in the older leaves, hence it is not easily mobilized from those leaves like all other elements. And it is required for cell wall synthesis. During cell division, cell wall synthesis occurs, right? For that cell division, this calcium is necessary, and also the middle lamella. Here the middle lamella between the cells, there is a layer is present right between the cell walls, that is called as middle lamella. For the synthesis of that middle lamella, calcium pectate and magnesium pectate was required. So calcium pectate means we need calcium, magnesium pectate means we need magnesium also. So for the synthesis of middle lamella, the calcium is necessary, and formation of the mitotic spindles and chromosomal organization also, this calcium is the important one. And not only that, it will activate several enzymes like ETPase, alpha amylase, phospholipase enzymes. And the next one is magnesium. Magnesium is absorbed in the form of magnesium ions. It is absorbed in the form of magnesium ions, and it required for growing areas of the roots, stems and leaves. It is required for the growing regions. And for the middle lamella, like calcium pectate, here for the middle lamella is also need magnesium pectate also. For that magnesium pectate, the magnesium is important requirement. And it is a if you see the chlorophyll pigment, the chlorophyll is a ring like structure. Chemical, it is a ring like structure. That ring like structure, it constitutes the magnesium as an important element. And this magnesium is required for the binding of ribosomal subunits during the protein synthesis. During the protein synthesis, the ribosomal larger and smaller subunits will bind to the mRNA. So for that binding process, the magnesium ions concentration is necessary, and it activates several enzymes which are involved in the photosynthesis and respiration. And not only that, it is also involved in the synthesis of DNA and RNA. And the next element is the sulfur. Sulfur, it is absorbed in the form of sulfate ions. It is also required for the young leaves and meristems, and this sulfur is present in several amino acids, vitamins. And if you see in the amino acids, there are two amino acids which constitute the sulfur. They are methionine and cysteine. And several vitamins also, like thiamine and biotin, coenzyme A, pyridoxine also consists of sulfur. So the deficiency of sulfur causes accumulation of pigment anthocyanin. Anthocyanin is a purple color pigment. Because of the deficiency of the sulfur, that causes accumulation of this purple color pigment anthocyanin. Iron, it is also requires a large amounts. So iron, it is a micronutrient, right? Here in all the micronutrients, this iron, it requires in large amounts. We have already studied nitrogen is important. Nitrogen is required for the large amounts, right? That nitrogen is a macro element. This iron is the micro element which is required in the large nutrients. When compared to all the micronutrients, the iron is required more. And it is absorbed in the ferric ions form. Ferric ions form, it is absorbed, and it is required everywhere in the body of the plants. It is required everywhere, roots, leaves, stems, all the parts, they require the iron. And it is important constituent of the proteins involved in the transfer of. Here during the electron transport chain, we'll study about this in the respiration topic. There are two proteins are present, pyridoxine and cytochromes. So these two proteins, they constitute the iron which are involved in the transfer of electrons between the membranes. And it is required for the formation of chlorophyll and other pigments also. So this is required for the chlorophyll, other pigments like hemoglobin also. This iron is important, right? And it activates catalase enzymes and other enzymes. This is about the iron. Next one is manganese. This manganese was absorbed in the form of manganese ions, requires in the seeds and leaves region. This manganese is important, and it activates several enzymes which are involved in the respiration, photosynthesis and nitrogen metabolism also. And here during the photosynthesis, there is a splitting of water molecules occurs to liberate the oxygen. For that splitting of oxygen, for the splitting of water molecule, this manganese is necessary, which occurs during the photosynthesis. And the deficiency of this manganese causes formation of gray color spots on the oats plants. Zinc, like all the like iron, it is also required everywhere in the plants, and it activates an enzyme called as carboxylase. Iron activates enzyme called as catalase, right? It activates enzyme carboxylase, required for the synthesis of a plant growth hormone called auxin. So for the synthesis of this hormone, the zinc is necessary, and it is also involved in the tryptophan synthesis. And because of the deficiency of this zinc causes leaf malformation. That means the size of the leaves was reduced, that is, the little leaf structures will be formed. The size of the leaves reduced means that there is a formation of little leaf. Next one is copper. Copper is absorbed in the form of copper ions. It is also required everywhere in the body of the plants, like zinc. And here, this is essential for overall metabolism in plants, for all metabolic activities. So this copper is essential, and this copper, it is associated with certain enzymes which are involved in the oxidation reduction reactions, and it is reversibly oxidized to copper ions during the electron transport. Hence this copper is essential for the photosynthesis and respiration reactions. Next one is boron. This boron is absorbed in the form of BO3 minus and B4O72 minus, and it is required for the leaves and seeds. And for the uptake of the calcium, this boron is important. Without this boron, the calcium will not be absorbed. And this boron helps in the functioning of cell membrane and pollen germination. What is meant by pollen germination? On the surface of the ovule, the pollen grain will germinate and form the pollen tube. Through the pollen tube, the male gametes will travel, right? For the process of pollen germination, this boron is essential, and it helps in the translocation of the carbohydrates. Here, the carbohydrates are translocated through the phloem to the roots, right? For that also boron is essential, and it is responsible for the cell elongation and cell differentiation also. And the deficiency of this boron causes loss of apical dominance. What is meant by apical dominance? The domination of the central branch over the lateral branches is called as, the main branch over the lateral branches is called as apical dominance. So because of the deficiency of this boron, the plants will lose the apical dominance, and also the root nodule formation also will not take place. So in the nitrogen fixing plants, in the legume plants, the rhizobium bacteria will fixes a nitrogen by forming root nodules. Because of the absence of this boron element, the root nodule formation will not take place in the legume plants. And the next one is the molybdenum. This molybdenum is absorbed in the form of molybdenum ions, and it is also required everywhere, and most commonly it is required in the roots. And it is a component of several enzymes, including it is the component of several enzymes. It plays important role in the nitrogen fixation. That means in the nitrogen fixation, there are several enzymes are present, like nitrogenase and nitrate reductase. So they are involved in the nitrogen metabolism. So for that enzymes, this molybdenum is the important component. Hence, it plays essential role in the nitrogen fixation reaction. And the next one is chlorine ions. The chlorine is absorbed in the form of chlorine ions, like copper, zinc. It is also required everywhere in the body of the plant. And along with the manganese, we have studied about this manganese in the photolysis of water during the photosynthesis, right? Here, along with this manganese, the chlorine is also involved in the liberation of oxygen during the photosynthesis. During the photosynthesis, the photolysis of water will take place to liberate the oxygen. So along with the manganese, this chlorine ions also required. And not only that, along with the sodium and potassium ions, the chlorine ions also helps in determining the solute concentration. That is, the anion-cation balance in the cells is maintained by the sodium, potassium and chlorine ions. The last one is nickel. Here, this nickel is absorbed in the form of nickel, Na2 plus nickel ions, and it is required for leaves and roots, and it is a component of several enzymes like urease and hydrogenase enzymes. The nickel is the important component, and hence it is involved in the urea metabolism. So this is about the nickel. With this we have completed the role of different macro and micro elements in the plants, and the next video we will study about the deficiency symptoms of the essential elements.